All right. We are live everywhere. So it'll go 3, 2, and 1. Well, hello, everyone. Almost got tied there. Tongue-tied. I should restart this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean Oso McCool.
McCool.
Yes.
Siri's yelling at me. I thought I turned you off.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
I guess Oso and Siri sounds the same.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Today we got a random flight. We're going to be discussing some different topics related to infotainment, authority. You've got something on tipping, Sean. We're going to ask questions about AI. Is it getting dumber? Is it getting stupider?
Getting more human?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Or just more human. Some seem to think AI's abilities in math and coding are diminishing, and we'll talk about that. And
interesting. Yeah.
So,
yeah, this will be. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that because I've noticed a couple things with it. And when you sent me that, I was like, oh, really interesting. So maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about some of the research, some of the problems with research, but I didn't realize this was new to me when I was reading about the, some of the math skills. Because you're thinking, man, that should be the least, or the area where I'm least concerned, right? Because, math is math, right?
Yeah. But it does point to ability to reason and all that kind of stuff,
True.
Which is why I think they use it. When they're trying to, it's a big thing. I don't think of, to me, chat is all about writing, but I know there's people that use it for coding, there's people that use it for all this other stuff. So my worldview is obviously a little bit different than what they have, but it is interesting, and it's a good hypothesis to kind of kick around. So we'll get into what exactly happened and what article we're talking about. Yeah, and we'll get into the tipping. There's a lot of rants on social media right now about tipping. Like
I think I know.
Is it like what's going on? And then
right.
But I'm going to give a specific situation at a local coffee shop that I was at. How they changed the little. When you flip the screen around, they change something. So we'll talk about what they changed and how it made me feel as a consumer.
So. Yeah, that one little change, that slight change is all you have to do. It's like asking, it's like the server in a restaurant where, you just add a little simple question in there or just tweak things just a tiny bit.
Yeah, I actually found an article. We can go into that if we have time, but like 12 ways to increase tips. And there's these are like tested ways to increase tips. And I think some of them could be applied to, other businesses besides just waiting tables and stuff.
Right.
So we'll go into all that stuff. Should be fun. So
awesome.
I am drinking the same beverage from last week because I bought a 6-pack last week. It's pretty good. So I'm drinking the old Devil's Backbone for those that were not with us last episode.
Yeah.
This is from our friends at Real Ale Brewing. And this is a Belgian-style triple. Comes in about 8%, and it's pretty good.
And the history behind that Devil's...
it's like an old
stretch of...
Yeah, it's an old stretch of road out in west or central Texas, hill country. It's west of here, but it's still central Texas. If you know your Texas geography, it's kind of like Georgia, right? You got or Tennessee, you got east, middle, and west, and they're all very different.
Yeah.
Same here. Hill country is very different than north central, which is Dallas, and then you got West Texas, which is Midland, Odessa.
I think that's where LBJ grew up, in that hill country.
Yeah, he grew up in what's it called? Yeah, it's between here and Fredericksburg. There's a town, and you drive through it. There's LBJ everything. It's like, so yeah. And I can't remember the name of the town. Just went blank. Anyway, what are you drinking on your side?
So I have it's called a coconut porter. I've never had this one before. I'm going to pull it up real quick. just to show.
I've had a coconut porter. Is that a brown can?
It's a white can.
Oh.
And it's from Cherry Street Brewing.
I have not had that one. That looks good.
Yeah, it's a. I picked
looks
this
like
up.
A seltzer. Looks like a seltzer can, not a beer can.
I know. So I was over at Casual Pint, which we used to do some shows. Occasionally, we'd go over there, and we would meet even before we ever did the podcast. We'd go over there from time to time, and I was go over there just getting some work done yesterday afternoon for about an hour. And before I left, I went and they had, they've got the glass cooler, and then they've got shelves of brews out there. But I found, this one stood out to me. I was like, that looks pretty refreshing. Coconut. I like coconut. 6%. It is I'm not familiar with Cherry Street. Cherry Street. It's, I don't think I've ever had anything from them, but
no, I don't recognize that. Coconut
porter brewed in the London robust porter style with hints of roast and cocoa, and a balanced bitterness. Toasted organic coconut flakes, dates, and vanilla bean. 6%, 31 IBUs. So
it says that coconut porter. Is that what it's called?
That coconut, not just coconut porter. That.
When I first looked at it, I thought it was like Thai coconut porter. That's what I saw when I first looked at it. But yeah, see, now it says that
coconut. It's even got its own. I call this in the industrial industry. It's got its own technical data sheet on it.
Yes, or speaker one sheet.
The speaker one sheet. There you go. So cool. Yeah, I'm interested. Silky smooth, organic toasted coconut. So we'll see.
I do like a good coconut porter, so that's not the one I was thinking of. So it should be good. All right, let's cheers it up.
Cheers it up. It's nice and dark, so I like that.
Yeah.
Cheers. Oh man. That's good.
Nice.
Very nice.
I don't know what I rated mine last time, but I'm going to give it a 4.
I was about to ask you.
I was going to give it
Can you remember? But I think I remember your rating.
I think it was rated a 4.
I think you're 4 on even.
I'm going to give it a 4 too. It's growing on me.
You give it a couple of points there.
Yeah.
What would lead you to give it a higher score than last week?
I think just getting used to that initial, because it's a Belgian triple, so it's got a certain taste that hits you, or that if you're not used to it, if you're used to drinking porters and stouts, it feels a little towards IPA, that floralness or whatever it is that's in these. But as you drink them and you get used to that initial shock, then I think you can taste more of the flavor and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just familiarity, which is a good marketing lesson too, right?
Sure, absolutely. Well, this is light, refreshing for a porter. You don't usually say light and refreshing, but I think that would summarize this. It's not real heavy. Doesn't feel real heavy. So I could drink this, even though it's a darker beer.
Yeah.
I have no problem drinking this, when it's 90 to 100 degrees outside.
Yeah. Or 105, like it is. I've not even been outside. I'm afraid to go outside now. Afraid I'm going to be that.
No, I wouldn't.
I'm going to be like in the Terminator on the fence.
Well, I'm going to give this one, I tell you, I will give this one I guess a solid 4.7. 4.7.
Nice.
Yeah. It's good. I like it.
The can looks refreshing. So it's nice that the can and the taste match.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
It's a very light can. So, all right. Well, let's jump in. Let's. Where do we want to start? We want to start with AI. You want to start with infotainment. You've been reading I think a book from
Settle,
right?
So this is actually pretty good. It's from and I got to give a shout out to Ben Settle. So he had a promotion. I ordered this. This is one of his promotions. If you're on Ben Settle's email list, which I would encourage anybody that is on
blacklisted from Ben.
I have. It's a good thing that you said that. I am still blacklisted from his email players list, but I can order products. Isn't that crazy? I am.
Need to get a new email and sign up.
Oh, listen, this is how good he is. He's the soup Nazi.
Yes.
And he would actually appreciate if he heard me say this, he would actually appreciate it because he's a big Seinfeld fan. But and even if I emailed him and made a big to do out of it, or I just asked him, he probably would take me off. But literally, I tried to get back on after I got knocked off his email list for. So what happened to our listeners? I was on his email players membership. I had a credit card on file. This was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The credit card either expired, I can't remember. It either expired or I had it replaced for whatever reason. And then and I didn't realize it. So he sent the email, the automatic email, you need to replace this like 2 times, or, update this, because if you get kicked off, you're not going to be able to come back on. That's his thing. Once you get kicked out of the group, you're out. And so I think I saw it and just forgot about it and completely forgot to update the information. Sure enough, my membership got canceled, and I tried to get back on. I apologized. I'm like, oh man, and use another credit card, would not let me. So he sticks to his guns. I mean, he literally said, if you get kicked off and this isn't taken care of, you can't get back on. So, so I tried to re-up, and I did try a different email address, but the IP address, he's got it set. So if you have even if it's a different email address, but it's still the same IP location, it's going to reject you.
Wow.
So it's like, sorry, we're not going to process this because of your IP address. So kudos to him. I mean, that's pretty good. That's like sticking your guns and like really creating that scarcity persona, which is what I'm gonna mention a few things in here. You've got to create a persona in some of your marketing. That's part of infotainment, but create the, and Ben comes across as, here's what you get. He's kind of he's like a younger version of Dan Kennedy, but he kind of takes that soup Nazi mentality of no soup for you, or no email list for you if you screw up. But he'll sell you stuff. He's got some, some good stuff out there. I bought a couple of books. I've also got his big book of business, which is, it's like a catalog. So there's a lot of good stuff to go through. So I'm still going to give him kudos, even though he kicked me off his list. Yeah.
I love his no refund policy. Like, he's just
absolutely. He just says it straight up. You're not getting a refund.
Yeah.
And he also says this might take 3 weeks for you to get. Just depends. Yeah. So
he's definitely got that grumpy Dan persona down for sure.
Yep.
I don't know if it's a persona. It may just be the way he is. I don't know.
Well, it's takeaway selling, because think about the psychological mind trick that he played on me when I got kicked off the list. I mean, think about that. I wanted to get back on. I was like, oh, what do I have to do? And how do I have to go through? Now, I'm sure if I had a conversation or reached out in a lengthy email, but I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But it's just that mind trick. It's that reverse psychology. I was like, well, dang it, I'm going to get back on. I got to find a way.
Yeah, we all want what we can't have.
Exactly. So it works well. So,
all right. So tell me about this book, the infotainment book. So he's got some promotion.
Huh? What's that?
Is this just a sales letter, or was this an actual?
It was a sales letter. He promoted in a sales letter, so I picked it up just for some. He's so good at his bullet points. If you just read some of his bullet points on his sales letters, that's an education in of itself, because he's really good. To me, he's better at this. I always thought Bob Bly was really good at his bullets on his sales letters, but I think Ben does a better job at his sales letter approach with the bullets. So, but I would recommend anybody get on his email list, because that's free. I mean, you can get on his email list.
You will get a lot of emails. But.
Oh yeah, you'll get one every day. But they're good. You go back and read them, and they're not lengthy, but they're really some great lessons along the way. So I'm going to mention one about donning the mask of. I think I sent you some clips on donning the mask of authority.
Okay.
These are some great lessons and there's a lot of like, so in the book, he's got a lot of like examples from sales copy. So about being, you got to educate in your market, but you also got to entertain. And, I love some of the ads that he uses on some of the pages throughout this, but there's one section on donning the mask of authority. It says, and I'll just read this. It says, one of the most fun ways to use infotainment is to create the dramatic persona of what you are selling. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, but he kind of gives some clear examples by using the super villains of persuasion.
Yeah.
No one cares. So he uses a really, he kind of leans toward the superhero genre, the comics and all that stuff.
He's a nerd. He's a geek.
Yeah, he is.
A geek, I guess, right?
So he uses the quote from The Dark Knight Rises from Bane. I don't know if you saw that, but the quote, no one cared who I was until I put on a mask. So there's a lot of examples that he uses throughout this, but I found it interesting how he talks about that's what it takes in any industry, and you've got to figure out what your voice is going to be.
Yeah.
And you've got to really create your brand around that voice, right? And there's some lessons, there's some clear takeaways that I can use in my own business, but there's one striking thing, and I highlighted this. He said, I mean, there's a fear in this, right, Sean? There's a fear in creating that persona. We all know that. I mean, it's everybody has it. So if you don't, you're lying. If you say you don't, you're lying.
Or you're a psychopath, one of the two.
But he says, after dealing with some of the most popular personalities in the marketing business world, I can testify that creating your own larger than life personality not only makes one more interesting, influential, and persuasive, but also extremely unique too, especially since most men will never do it. And the reason why they won't is simply this: they're frozen with fear at the mere thought of even just being themselves. Can you imagine that? People are too scared to even be their most authentic selves. He says, to give you an idea of how widespread this fear is, podcasters and influential leaders in the marketing world have invited me to teach their audiences how to be authentic. Yes, it's got to be bad. Men literally have to be taught how to be themselves.
That's nothing new, though. I mean, psychologists have been saying that for years.
Sure.
It's like, it's very hard to be yourself, right? Because there's so many other influences and ways we're supposed to be for society that it sometimes can be very hard to be yourself.
Yeah. And think about, like, he talks about donning the mask. We're all curious about the person that dons the mask, or that creates the curiosity effect.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the most talked about character from Star Wars? Darth Vader, right? Because he wore a mask. I'm assuming most people gravitate towards Darth Vader. I mean, that's what comes to mind, even though he was a villain.
Yeah, but he's definitely the central character in a lot of those.
Absolutely.
Depending on which of the 46 Star Wars you're watching, but yeah, he's definitely a key character. Until Baby Yoda came along, then I think kind of knocked him off.
That's right. Baby Yoda stole some hearts there.
This reminds me too of Todd Herman's book, Alter Ego.
Yes, I was thinking about that when I was going through this section.
Yeah, where he talks about, you got to be bigger than life.
Yeah.
In order to get people's attention. That's just what it takes. It's kind of like the Joshua Lysick book that we read, being better is not enough anymore. Like, you got to be bigger than life now.
Yeah. Right.
So good they call you a fake. You got to be like, and obviously a mask is being sort of fake, right? So you got to don this personality. The other movie that comes to mind is Jim Carrey's The Mask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how when he was just that, he wasn't it. But when he boosted his personality traits with the mask, then all of a sudden everybody noticed him, right? And I think I think that's true. I mean, I think there's something about being authentic, but then also being able to magnify the things that are authentic
Yourself.
about you
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yourself.
Yep.
It's kind of like all the best actors. They kind of play the same role over and over. Because there's some part of them that's kind of the same as the character, but then the character takes it up a level. You know, whether it's Tom Cruise or Matthew McConaughey or whoever. You know, there's another
Tom Cruise
level.
is a great example because that guy just puts on. I mean, that guy lives who he pretends to be. I mean, well, not pretend, but that's.
And he plays basically the same character over and over.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a little different, you know. But you can see his core being come through. But it is a little larger than life. So
yeah.
You know, I was listening to Green Lights recently. Matthew McConaughey's
great book. Yeah.
Yeah. And he talked about how when he had to make that shift from rom-com to more serious roles and how like people couldn't handle it. Like they wanted the rom-com and like he went like almost 2 years without a role holding out, you know, long enough that people forgot about the old him.
Sure.
So he could be the new him.
Yeah. Ooh, that's so important.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you got to turn away. I mean, he missed out on some money there, right?
What, I think they said $14.5 million was one of the contracts that came through. And
wow.
They kept up, you know, it started out at like 5 and they kept upping it to like 14.5. He's like, oh, let me take one more look at that script. But he held to his guns, you know, and I know not everybody can do that. You know, he'd made some good money and was good with his money. So he was able to kind of hold out. But I think, it's tough, like to shift gears sometimes, to change masks, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. Especially, people sometimes get typecast and they fall into that.
I don't think we defined, I think a lot of our listeners know, but just in case there's some that don't, how would you define infotainment?
I think it's the combination of education, but with entertainment. So, you know, you want to educate your public, but just if you're straight educating, that's boring. You know, you've got to find a clear way of entertaining them in the process. And some of the best, you know, the best marketers out there have found a way to educate, but also at the same time, they're entertaining. And in this day and age where you have Instagram and, you know, TikTok and, you know, everything is little short clips. It's more imperative than ever not to give lengthy, dull presentations or lengthy, dull, you know, that's one thing that we talk about, like in my industry. So I started, you know, I do a podcast on a regular basis because I tell people, no one likes to read technical papers. They would rather listen to a podcast, right? Why read a technical paper when you can go listen to some people having a conversation over a topic that you could get, you know, you typically would get from a technical paper, but you'd fall asleep reading it, you know? So, you know, that's on a level of how I create the infotainment, but I'm trying to take it up even a notch further in that industry, because the demographic of people in that industry are younger. I mean, they're going to get younger as people retire and move on. And so you always got to think about how to reach the upcoming generation. You know, what platforms are they on? What are they looking at? What are they watching? You know, so I've traditionally been, an audio podcast for years, but now I'm trying to look at ways to create better audio or better video content to go with my podcast, you know, within that platform to reach a bigger audience and obviously to reach, you know, have a broader demographic of people that are coming into the industry that may not listen to podcasts, but like they'll watch stuff, you know, they're on YouTube all the time. So,
and I think when you mix entertainment, it lowers the resistance as well, right? Because you're not as when you're in that entertainment mode, you're more receptive, you're more open. So when you can make people laugh, I mean, JP Sears is a great example of this, right? When he started he was a very serious life coach, and then he went into, making fun of life coaches on YouTube, and now he's going all political.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, but he still makes some very important points for his audience, but he does it through humor, and
Yeah.
a lot of the great comedians, like, they make really good points. I mean, Dave Chappelle, some of these other guys tackle very heavy subjects with entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think you can do that with infotainment, is you can talk about things that you wouldn't normally talk about when you have a bigger personality to do it with.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I think personality says it all. You got to be loud, and as uncomfortable as that is, sometimes you're going to have to, that's just what people are looking for. You got to start getting a little uncomfortable, or comfortable being uncomfortable, as they say.
Yep.
And so I've had to wrestle with that a little bit myself, because that's typically that's not how I'm wired. And
right.
So,
I think you just have to exaggerate whatever your main thing is, so so maybe it's not necessarily being over the top or louder, but maybe you're like, I think of, what was the comedian who, like, he just always did like the super deadpan stuff. Like, there's several of them, but like,
yeah,
but it's exaggerated. Like, I'm sure he doesn't have all his conversations, super deadpan. Right. But so if that's your thing, then go big on that, with if you're really into dad jokes, maybe incorporate more dad jokes into your stuff. So yeah, I think you got to figure out what your kind of key personality quirk is and enhance it. Just like every supervillain has, their thing, their weird quirk. That's what becomes
absolutely
part.
You've got, and think about, like, from a news standpoint, I try not to spend too much time on the news, but look at where the news is today. It's not really news. It's entertainment. If you flip on regardless of what channel you go to, it's all about, they're just trying to capture eyeballs, and, it's not really investigative reporting anymore. That's not what the news is anymore. It's like, you pick a side, and then you just entertain whatever side that you've decided you're going to cater your news to, or your information to. And that's basically what it is. And they mix in entertainment with it. They have goofy facts and trivia and stuff like that go along with it. But
got their villains, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Depending on which network you're on, or whatever, like, they got their villains.
Yeah.
And they love them,
Yeah.
I think, I think Rush Limbaugh was, really started a lot of that, 30, 40 years ago, even, with his radio show. Like, he understood 30 years ago. He was like,
for sure.
This is an entertainment, like,
talent on loan from God.
Yes. But yeah, he, for better or for worse, he really established that whole idea of, like, really digging into the personality and the entertaining his audience with what sounded like news, but it was actually just entertainment.
Yep, absolutely.
Because even getting riled up about something is a form of entertainment.
It is. People like to hear that.
Yeah.
And even like what we do, we're kind of a smaller microcosm of, we do a simple podcast, but what are we doing? We're incorporating it with beer and just talking about different topics related to persuasion every week. We don't try to be serious.
Bad jokes.
Jokes, dad jokes, and so
sound effects, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, because you want it to be somewhat interesting.
Yeah. In fact, we had a comment on our YouTube page recently. Somebody said they appreciate it was the way here's one of the comments from one of our recent shows. The way you seamlessly blend education and entertainment into your videos is impressive. So
very nice.
I didn't know we were so entertaining.
We are impressive. I'm putting that on my LinkedIn profile. Impressive.
Yeah. So
it'd be like the movie quotes, right? That you just take the one word out of the whole review.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it in quotes.
Speaking of which, I gotta say, I had to mention a movie that my kids and I saw last night with this Flash. I don't know if you've seen that, but it was
I
just
thought you were going to say Barbie. Took your boys to Barbie.
no. The Flash is a big flop. It went to streaming automatically. It was probably one of DC's big flops of the summer, I guess. But I was curious because I just wanted to see good old Michael Keaton back as the Bat. You know, it's kind of nostalgic for me, but it was horrible. It was so bad. It was cringy, man. It was like mostly CGI, and it was really bad CGI too. So it was not very entertaining. It was entertaining from a sense that my kids and I were actually laughing just at how bad it was. Wow. So I'm not sure that that's the full effect that they wanted to get.
I don't think that was the pitch to the producers, probably. Oh man, it's gonna be so bad. People will be laughing in the theaters. Not gonna inspire a lot of funding there. No. But they obviously convinced somebody.
Yeah.
DC, man, they just, other than Wonder Woman, they just can't get it right.
They can't. They're just missing it. And they tried to tie in this multiverse thing, like I guess Marvel. They've stolen that and tying in so many, because what they do is they create so many different personas and these characters, or different movies around them with different characters playing them.
Yeah.
And so it really gets confusing. And then they try to tie it in with this crazy thing, this idea called a multiverse. And that's what they use as the reasoning behind everything. So, but it ends up being silly and stupid. And however, we did see Mission Impossible, and that was a fantastic movie.
Okay. Put that on the list.
You definitely would. I would recommend that. That's very
that's
entertaining.
One you want to see in the theater for sure.
Yeah. And I will say too, like we've talked about, Sean, Tom Cruise has this thing where even on, he did it on Top Gun, but even on Mission Impossible, he thanks his fans before the movie begins. Yeah, he did it again.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was going to do that again. So
he did.
Interesting that you said that. So
yeah, pretty cool.
Anything else from the infotainment jackpot you want to cover?
No, I'm gonna go through this, and maybe I'll dig out some other nuggets for next week, or for our next random flight. But that was one thing that stuck out to me, is just the need to create donning that mask of personality within your business. And it doesn't have to be loud and obnoxious, but it needs to be something, Yeah. So,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't have to be loud and obnoxious, but it does need to be a personification, an amplification of your kind of thing. Right.
Yep.
So, all right, well, let's talk about, let's talk about AI. And you sent me this article, which I'm putting on the screen for those of you that watch us on video,
right
over at the YouTubes. GPT-4 is getting significantly dumber over time, according to a recent study. And the study was by Stanford University, which, is a little suspect, because I think there's some guys at Stanford that made their own large language model. So maybe this is a hit, a little bit of a hit piece. I don't know.
Yep.
But this is interesting because they did a test back in May. I think is that what it was? March. And they did the exact same test again in June of this year. And GPT-4 got dumber.
Yeah.
Answers. So they did 4 different types of tests. They did a math test, a math question. They asked like an unethical type question, and then they asked, I guess, another math question, and I can't remember what the last one was. Visual reasoning, like where you have to detect patterns and stuff.
Yeah.
And in pretty much every case, it got dumber. But what's interesting is Chat GPT 3.5 actually did better.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
So it's really weird. So it's like, and some of the theories is like, we're putting in information, with what we're putting in, and we're giving feedback, because after every post, you can give a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
So like, are we as humans making GPT dumber, or is it just
It appears to be.
it seems like once we started interacting with it, it got dumber.
Which can explain a lot,
Yeah. So maybe, so yeah, maybe like they won't take over because they're going to learn to be like us.
It makes me not so scared of the future, Sean.
I know, right? What's the old saying? Like, you are the 5 people you hang around the most. So now that chat's been hanging around humans, it's like, oh, it's a little dumber now.
It's not going to take over the world. It's going to be too busy, thinking about drinking beer on the weekend or.
Yeah, it's like, oh, dude, a new episode of TMZ's out.
But I'll take over the world next week.
Yeah,
just kind of tired this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna start procrastinating on your answers when you ask it for
exactly.
It's like, oh, did I say Tuesday? I meant next Tuesday. I'll get that to you. Yeah, it'll start having out of office replies.
Yep.
Sorry, ChatGPT is on vacation this week.
Another vacation.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting that it's and like by significantly, I think the question it asked was, is 17077 a prime number? Think step by step and then answer yes or no. So it was supposed to show its work like any good math student. Your teachers always wanted to show you work.
Sure.
So in March, it was 97% accurate, but in June, it was only 2.4% accurate. Like, that's a huge drop.
A huge, that's
but not at the same time, GPT 3.5 went from 7.4% to like 80 something percent. So it got smarter, but GPT 4 got dumber.
Yeah.
So I guess
and the 4 is the paid version.
I know, right? So I guess the people who are using the paid version are not very good influencers of the system.
Yeah. Well, it makes me, here's my hypothesis from that.
Okay.
The people that are paying for it, typically, techies don't want to pay for anything. They hate paying for anything. So they're always looking to get something free. So they're not using the paid version. They're using the 3.5. The people that are using the paid version are the creators out there, or they're more of the, the writers, the artists out there.
Yeah. And I think and a lot of marketers are using
the marketers. Yeah. But they're not like the people that are involved in maybe coding and mathematics so much. And I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that. It's probably.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this kind of shakes out over the next 6 months to see if this is just like a weird blip. But yeah, it is something to kind of keep an eye on it. And they make a good point. It's like, if you're going to use this, you're going to depend on it. You better be testing it from time to time to see if it's still doing what you think it's doing.
Right. Yeah.
Which is pretty good advice for any tool that you're using, like do some tests.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's an employee, right? It's like from time to time, you need to test to see if they're still as good as you thought they were, when you hired them. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. AI might be getting dumber, which, man, that happened quick. Not even a year old yet, really.
Didn't take a lot of time, but
I mean, it was November when it kind of took its, went public. So yeah, less than a year, and it's already like getting dumber. So that'll be interesting how they fix that. And again, I think it could also just be a hit piece. Sort of.
It could be. Yeah. You don't know.
There's all these models that are now competing for each other.
Sure.
So oh, is this just people going after the big dog and they figured out a way to manipulate results, or is this, actually happening?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. We can either shift gears to tipping or how to create authority with dynamic personality, which is your topic.
Let's go to the tipping, because I might save the dynamic personality for some of those things for next week.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, I think it's been 2 weeks ago now, I went to a coffee shop here in Austin, and I go up to the counter, order my stuff, and they do the old, it's going to ask you a few questions when they flip the screen around, the point of sale screen.
Right.
They're like, oh, it's going to ask you a few questions, and they look away because they're embarrassed by
Yeah.
they're pretending like they don't want to see what you're going to pick. And there's always the tip screen there, right? And usually when you see a tip screen, it's like 15, 20, 25%, or
Sure. Yeah.
Some combination, 10, 20, 10. It's usually not a 10 on there because they want you to go higher.
Right.
So it's usually like 15, 20, 25, something like
Right.
that. Some of them do a little tighter, 15, 17 and a half, 20, something like that.
Right.
So, nobody, and there's a whole lot of like people right now. Social media is kind of lit up with like, is tipping culture gone too far? There's a lot of articles about this right now.
Yeah.
Because like in Europe, they don't tip. My understanding, it's very rare. Whereas in the US, like now, it's like everywhere you go wants a tip.
Yeah.
And people are like, if I go into a fast food restaurant and you just take my order, I don't think you need a tip, right? Plus, those places typically aren't on the same pay scale as like a restaurant.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you work at least when I worked at a fast food, I got minimum wage. But when I worked at a restaurant as a waiter, I got less than minimum wage because you were expected that tips would make up for it.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah. Like paid $2 an hour, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I used to work at a Mexican restaurant when I lived in Athens going to college. Yeah. It was like $2.05 and then everything else was tips. Whereas like, I think at the time, minimum wage was like $3.75.
Sure.
So it was almost half. So anyway, I go to this place, a little coffee shop, Radio Coffee Bar, which is a great place. It's great because they have coffee, but they also have a bar. So you can just switch from coffee to bar and stay there all day. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they flip the screen around, instead of it saying 15, 20, 25 or percentage, it said $1, $2, $3. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I noticed myself right away being like, oh, that's a better, like
that doesn't feel as big.
Yeah. It felt a lot smaller. So I picked $1 and my order was $5.95, right? Whatever I got, coffee, cold brew, something. So when I sat back down, when I left and I went back to the table, I noticed, I was like, so what percentage was that? I'm like curious, like what percentage is that? It's actually $1, even though it was the smallest option, which made me feel good, sort of, right? Because I feel like I'm saving money. Was actually, I mean, $1 of $5.95 is over, or it's almost 20. It's right at 20%.
Yeah.
Whereas if I had to pick the 10% option, if it was on percentage, it would have been 59 cents.
Right.
So I spent more than what I was going to spend.
Yeah.
Because literally all they did was take the order and like, it was nitro cold brew. So they just did the tap and handed it to me. It's like,
sure,
10 seconds. It's not, I don't know that it's worth 20% tip, but it did feel better. I noticed like it felt better. And also my brain didn't have to work as hard.
Right.
Because I didn't have to calculate percentage.
20%. What is that?
Yeah, it's like 20%. That's 60 cents, $2.20. Like,
it's clean. It's like one.
Yeah.
What were the increments? 1,
2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. So that's like 1, 2, and 3 consecutive numbers.
So if you had to pick 3, that'd be a 50% tip.
Yeah.
Which very few people would pick a 50% tip.
Right.
Right. But there's some people that are going to pick the $2, especially because it's in the middle, which would end up being about a 30% tip.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. Right.
Yeah.
So I bet their overall tips went up. Now, what I don't know, like, does the system give you different dollar amounts based on the total? Right. Because like at a coffee shop, your average order is going to be $6 to $10. Right. Yeah. As opposed to a restaurant.
I don't think so, because I think Panera does that. From what I remember, Panera does that. And it's the same whether you order a cup of coffee or you buy dinner.
Really?
It's the same. Okay. It's not a percentage. They just go off the numbers.
Interesting. So they don't do
$1 because they do have, I think they do have a $1 option to start with. And then it's like, I don't know if they go consecutive. Maybe it goes 1, 3. Maybe that skips a number.
Yeah, I wonder if any of those change. Like, if
Yeah.
it does go to $20, if like the second two numbers change or something.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, obviously that'd be a pretty easy program to write.
Yeah. And I, typically it's like you said, Sean, I don't mind tipping like for dinner, especially if they're making something,
Mhm.
but for a coffee, it's like, whoa, man.
Yeah.
You start thinking about that dollar, that is a little more than, that's more than 10% for sure.
But it feels less.
And here's the thing. If you're like at some places where you actually have to, they just hand you a cup and you're literally having to go back and pour the coffee yourself. I mean, that's what Panera does, because they'll include it if you're going in to get a coffee, just straight coffee, not a latte or a cappuccino or whatever. But they're going to give you that option, and they're going to hand you a cup, and you're going to hit $1, and then you're going to walk out.
It's crazy. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, so I think it's like, I know there's a lot of people like that don't like the whole tipping, like everybody asking for a tip,
Right.
But
that's a better way to present it, I think.
I think so too. Now here's what's really interesting. This has a whole nother level to it.
Yeah.
I posted this kind of thing on my Facebook profile, and a bunch of people commented. Yeah. And then one of my friends on Facebook, Corey Shanes, who might be coming on as a guest in the future.
Yeah.
He's like, he said, the best one I've ever seen, talking about tipping options, were 20, 30, and 100% at a taco shop.
Wow.
Now, he lives in St. Augustine. He gave me the name of the taco shop. And I was like, okay. And then he said, he asked, does anyone ever hit 100%, like tap 100%? And the people working there said every single Friday and Saturday night after the bars empty out. And they said, they even called the 100% tip the fun button.
The fun button.
So they realized
that's a good prime.
They actually realized that because they have this certain crowd that comes in drunk, and they're the only thing open at 2 a.m., people appreciate it.
Yeah.
And they're willing to tip 100% under those circumstances.
Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting, that 100% tip is not out of the question if you understand the context and the audience that you're in front of at the time.
Right.
And I don't know if that's always on, or if that's just like Friday and Saturday nights that they do that. But it was actually, the place is A1, burritoworks.com is the company, and they're in St. Augustine, Florida. And some people think that Taco Bell stole the Crunchwrap Supreme from this place, which they call the Mexican UFO.
What? That's awesome.
Which is a better name than the Crunchwrap Supreme.
Yes, very much.
So,
which is like that's my favorite thing on the Taco Bell menu, is a Crunchwrap Supreme.
Yeah. So this place it's called the Mexican UFO.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because it's out of this world.
See, again, we're like going back to infotainment. That works a whole lot better than Crunchwrap Supreme.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And I love it. Yeah, because it's out of this world. That's a great little tagline. So you can get 100% tips if you do it in the right way and do it in a fun way. And you know kind of again, it's knowing your audience, right?
Yeah.
Okay, these people are coming in drunk. They're coming in hungry.
That's nothing
else
You're
open.
Primed. They're hungry.
Yeah, there's nothing else open. So they're like, it's $5 taco. Sure, I just spent $200 on drinks.
Yeah,
what's another $10? Until they wake up Monday morning, they're like, oh,
damn it, what did I do?
Yeah, too late then.
I hit the fun button. That's what I did.
Yeah. So. But even calling it the fun button is like, to have that kind of in the culture of the restaurant, in case somebody questions it.
Yeah.
They can be like, yeah, that's the fun button. Everybody hits that if they're having fun. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, see somebody drunk. Oh, okay. Fun button.
Have you noticed some of these transactions now are they'll want to mark up to, like, if your order's like, say $6.57. Hey,
Yeah.
Sean, do you want to round up to $7 to support?
Support whatever. I actually don't mind that too much. It's like,
I know, but I
did
wonder
that
if how legit some of that stuff is.
like, where's it actually going? Well, the bigger question is, like, I mean, how many people check the receipts from the grocery store, right? With all these you could add $1 on every order, and 99% of people are never going to check the receipt.
No, of course not.
They could be adding millions of dollars a year, and we wouldn't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just tiny little increments like that.
Yeah. It's like do you remember the Superman movie with Richard Pryor?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where he got all the half cents from paychecks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then he shows up in his red Ferrari.
Yeah. There's real stories outside of just Superman of people that have made fortunes of, getting tiny little, half cents or quarter of a cent off something. I mean, look at cell phone companies. Analyze that. You look.
I mean, that's the business model for. I mean, that is the business model for Visa and MasterCard, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Give me 2% of every transaction. That's all I ask.
Volume. They make it up in volume. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I think when I worked in the financial newsletter business, Porter Stansberry, he called that toll gate companies, right? Because every transaction's got to go through that toll gate, and they get a little piece of it,
right?
And it adds up to really big business. So
yeah.
So if you can get in that world, it makes you wonder, like, how do you apply this idea of tipping or, that kind of thing to your business? I also pulled up this article because I was just kind of curious about tipping. Like, what are some ways that you could improve tips?
Right.
And some of these were, pretty basic. And if it works for people departing with their money, it makes me also wonder, like, how this would further any given relationship, any given marketing or sales relationship, right?
Yeah.
So I'll go through some of these. There was like 12 different ways, scientifically tested ways to earn more tips.
Okay.
And some of these are so simple, and yet you can go to a restaurant and most people are not doing them.
Right.
And some restaurants, you can tell it's just part of the SOP. Because they all do it, right? So number one was introduce yourself. Now, you wouldn't think that's like, you think everybody would just naturally do that, right? But like introducing yourself, they did a study and it increased tips from $3.49 to $5.44 just by introducing themselves.
Wow.
That's almost a 50% jump.
Yeah.
In the tip. Another one was use positive body language. So look, basically smile was the biggest thing. Increased tips from 15% to 18% of the bill.
Just from smiling.
Just from smiling.
Wow.
I was like, that's pretty simple. And if you can't smile in your job as a waiter, then you probably shouldn't be doing that.
You should be
a coder. You should not be working with the public.
Right.
This one was interesting. Employ the power of touch. So in a study conducted at 2 restaurants in Oxford, Mississippi, customers left a 12% tip when they were not touched, a 14% tip if they were touched once on the shoulder for about half a second, and 17% tip if they were touched twice on the hand for about half a second each time.
Wow. That's
interesting, right?
What if they were called Hun?
Sweetie pie. It was Oxford, Mississippi. So, and let's see, customers who were briefly touched on the arm by the waitress when she took their order were 2.5 times more likely to leave a tip.
Interesting.
Casual touch increases the tips of both male and female service and often goes unnoticed.
Wow.
Obviously, it can't linger too long, right? Just got to be a quick, kind of
Sure.
tap.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't be.
Don't want to make it uncomfortable. Just quick.
Another one says presentation is everything. male patrons gave between 14.6 and 26.1% more to waitresses who wore red.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, obviously a lot of places have uniforms, so you couldn't do that. But
Yeah.
it could even be something as simple as red lipstick,
Yeah.
or some type of red or hair ornamentation, such as a flower, a
Red
bow, something
nails.
like that. Yeah, red nails, anything like that.
Yeah.
This one makes a lot of sense to me. People, so repeating the order once they take the order.
Yes.
Is that
I've
big
heard
for
this.
you? Like that's
Yeah.
important to me. Like it makes me feel better when they repeat the order,
Yes.
especially the ones that don't use paper to write anything down because they think they're being cool. Like I don't know what this thing is with restaurants. They're like, oh, we're just going to memorize your order. Like we're not going to write anything down.
Yeah.
That actually makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Yep. Yeah, because
it creates,
I feel like something's going to get left out along the way.
I know, right? Especially if you're with anybody that has a special order.
Yeah.
And they change their mind like 3 times. You're like, oh my God, they're going to mess up everything. So when the waitress indicated that she understood the order and said something like coming up, she was tipped 52% of the time. But when she repeated the order, 78% of her customers tipped. And
Why is that?
And the average tip was double in size.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious what your thought on that is, because I mean, I've heard this before. So
I think it's just like I was just saying, it reduces the anxiety. So you're just happier. I mean, I think that's really the core of what's going on.
I think there's some mirroring too going on, don't you think? I mean, like that mirroring effect.
Yeah.
Where you're that plays such an important part in, where you're mimicking what other people are doing. So, it's very persuasive and it works in negotiation and
if you're having a sales conversation, you repeat their answer.
That's right.
It shows you're listening. It shows empathy.
Shows that's the important thing. It shows that you actually are listening to what they're saying and not say, yeah. Yep.
Which creates in me, as the person talking, it lowers my anxiety.
Right.
Like I don't have to think about, oh, is this going to be correct?
Right.
I can go on with my conversation. Like it just makes everything just, I think, more calm.
Yeah.
So another one, real quick, is give compliments. So even something as simple as that's a good choice. Increase tips by 2%.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder, like, I know we're not doing tips, like if you're doing online marketing or things like that, but if you were to say, on the thank you page, like, oh, great choice.
Yeah.
Things like that. It's going to just foster this sense of rapport and empathy and things like that.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah. How many times have you heard a server, when they take your order, say, oh, that's a great choice?
Not very often.
Well, yeah, I know. And you're right. It's not very often, but when you hear it,
you're like, oh,
it reinforces, it really makes you think, oh, I made the right choice. And
I think it goes back to that anxiety thing, and it just makes you feel safe, right? It's like, oh, good.
Yeah.
Like I love it when somebody says, oh, that's a great choice. Everybody loves that one. It's like, oh, good.
Yeah. I made I didn't pick a doozy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that's one of my favorites. I mean,
and this wasn't on there, but one of my favorite things from a server, and I usually test this everywhere I go. I'll ask them for their recommendation.
Yeah.
And if they give me like one recommendation, they're like, oh, this is the best thing on the menu.
Sure.
And they stop. I'm like, okay, I like that. I like
that's right.
But if they go, well, this is really good. And
this
so is this.
Yeah, they give you,
and then this, and then this. I'm like,
doesn't help.
It doesn't help at all. And now I think you're just being nice, right? Which does not.
Right.
So this, talking about infotainment earlier. So this one was really interesting. Be entertaining.
Yes.
So a French study found that giving customers a card with a joke on it almost doubled the number of people who left a tip and increased the average size of each tip from 16 to 23%.
Wow.
In New Jersey, a waitress gave half of her customers a card that read, "Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of many years," and asked them to count the number of F's.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a word puzzle type thing.
Yeah.
These customers were surprised to find out the correct number of F's was 6 and gave the waitress a bigger tip than those who did not read the card. So just being entertained increased the size of the tip.
It's great.
I thought
People love to be entertained, man.
if I was going to be a server in today's world, I would have a magic trick. Like I'd have a go-to magic trick that I do every table.
Yep.
Something entertaining, something that gets people talking. I think that would be fun to do at every table.
I think of the movie. Remember the movie Cocktail from the
oh yeah,
with Tom Cruise? Like
yeah.
that was his thing.
I'm going to be
he
singing
wasn't
that
just a
song the rest of
bartender.
the day now. It's going to be stuck in my head.
He's flipping. He's entertaining. He's
Yeah.
People loved him. They gravitated towards him. He was like the bartender because
Yep.
He was entertaining his patrons, not just serving them a drink. He's flipping bottles, and so great lessons from that movie.
So here's a couple more, and then we'll finish up. So number 8 was sell, sell, sell. So obviously, then that if you sell, the bill gets bigger, right? So no matter. But by suggesting dessert and dinner drinks, things like that, it can increase the the bill by like up to 20 or 30%. I've often said, like, if people would just, instead of saying, "Do you want dessert?" This reminds me of Elmer Wheeler's Tested Sentences That Sell, which is a great classic direct response book.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, "Would you like dessert?" which a lot of people are going to say no to, right? Because they're full.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dessert sounds, if you just put it like that.
But if I say, "Hey, would you like your dessert here or to go?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's like an either or choice, not a whether or not you're going to do a choice, right?
Right.
And a lot of people don't even think about taking it to go. So if you offer them, "Hey, would you like your dessert here to go? I can box it up, so you can have it, enjoy it later while you're, watching Netflix."
Yep.
Be like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea."
Or if they describe it, would you? I mean, here's they tell you, instead of saying dessert,
bring out the dessert tray.
They bring out the dessert tray.
That's what the high-end restaurants do, right?
Yeah.
They're like, "Have you seen our desserts?" Like, it's one thing to say. It's kind of like the difference between saying no to somebody on the phone and saying no to somebody in person.
Yep.
Right. It's harder in person than it is on the phone or by email or something else. So if you bring the dessert tray out, it's like, "Oh, which one of these would you like this evening?"
Yeah.
So I like all of them.
Man, I tell you, and I tell you, there's one restaurant, and it's over in the Nashville area. I'm going to give them a plug here.
All right.
It's a restaurant called J. Alexander's, but they have the most, and I don't even I'm not a fan of carrot cake, but this is like the most amazing carrot cake I've ever had.
Yeah.
But they won't just say at the end of the meal, they won't just come to you and say, "Would you like dessert?"
Yeah.
They know their carrot cake is, phenomenal, the best. And they're automatically priming you with, "I'll bet you might like a piece of our world famous carrot cake." And it's hard to resist. I mean, the way they frame it, you're not going to leave without a slice of our famous carrot cake. And I mean, it is the best. It's renowned. So,
well, I think what else you can do is you can, like you do in sales, right? You can start planting seeds earlier.
That's right.
For desserts. Like even when you're taking the drink orders and appetizers, you'd be like, "Hey, remind me to tell you about our new dessert special."
That's right.
You're going to love this one. Or, whatever, something like to drop a little hints and get people thinking about it.
Yeah.
Then when you come around and say, "Hey, remember that dessert I told you about? You can get it here or you can get it to go. Which would you prefer?"
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about getting it
You've
to
been
go."
priming them the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah. And all right. So another big one was a garnished check. So basically leaving some type of note on the check actually increased the percentage of people leaving a tip from 21 to 38% and saw the average tip rise by 7%.
Interesting.
So it's so smiley faces worked for women that did not work for men. It actually backfired for men. They got lower tips if
Really
men did, if a waiter, I guess they're all servers now, but like, if the male servers did a smiley face, they got a lower tip.
It makes sense.
They could do stuff like us. This is very interesting. They could do stuff like the weather is supposed to be really good tomorrow. I hope you enjoy your day. That worked for men. Also, like pictures of a sun as opposed to a smiley face worked for men.
Yeah.
But smiley face did not work for men.
No.
Very interesting.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yep.
Last two real quick. Call a customer by name when you bring them their check or the final check. Because once you get their credit card, you can read their name. And so when you come back to the table, you say, hey, Mr. Taylor, really appreciated taking care of you. Really enjoyed taking care of you tonight. Hope you have a great evening. If there's anything else you need, let me know. Right?
Yeah.
So just saying your name at that. And I've always wondered why, because everybody uses a card now, right?
Why people don't use that? Because
people don't use that more often.
That's the most important, word to that person is their own name. Why aren't you taking that from the credit card and using that at the very end?
Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing was after dinner candy. So this is the reciprocity principles, which we've talked about plenty of times. But it was one of the ways to, especially if you offered more candy.
I don't understand why more like high-end restaurants don't do this. I don't see it a lot at high-end restaurants. Where I do see it, it is restaurants like the Olive Garden, which is not, I wouldn't consider the Olive Garden a really high-end, but they always leave those chocolate mints.
They do the Andes mints,
Yeah, the little Andes mints. They
the
give you
Gondolier, which is kind of a local chain where you are.
Yeah.
The Gondolier does that too. I think they do the Andes mints.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves them. And when you get like enough for 2 for each person.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're that tip's going up.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's a bonus, man. I don't need
dessert. If I was a server
right?
these days,
yeah,
I would have my own stash somewhere.
I would too. Even if there wasn't restaurant policy. I mean, I would get like, hey, I'm just going to hand these out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Dum-Dums,
Hershey's Kisses, whatever.
Something, Tootsie Rolls, whatever. Yeah. It almost doesn't matter what it is. It's just the fact that you give them that. It's like reciprocity, and then people, and they showed a couple different ways, but pretty much anytime you gave candy at the end of the meal, it increased tips.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, like, how could you apply this to online businesses? How could you apply this to like what you do, Jonathan, with in-person sales? Like, obviously in-person sales, we've known for years, taking donuts or taking stuff like that to the meeting. Like, it works, right? It works so well, in fact, that most HR departments have put rules into place that you can't give gifts to some of these companies.
Oh, I know. I've had conversation with many people over the years of, I can't accept that,
Yeah.
So, but there's always rules around those.
Yeah. Most times you can take them to lunch still.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think they were trying to cut down on the big trips and things like that people were offering. So.
I used to give like, and I still do, like around Christmas time, like a ton of gift cards. Like I'm huge on, typically giving gift cards, like, what is the Omaha Steaks. I love Omaha Steaks.
Oh yeah.
Like giving those at the end of the year. But yeah, some purchasing people will respond when I send those. Hey, I'm not able to accept this. And typically, once I learn that from them, my way around that is next time around, I'll send them a restaurant gift card. And if I still do it, but it's a restaurant, it's a restaurant gift card. They say, hey, I told you I can't do this. I'm like, hey, save it for when we go out to dinner.
Yeah.
So you can still use it. So it's still, you still get that effect, and they're like, okay, whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like finding a way around the rule. So
Yeah. Yeah. So be thinking about like, and a lot of this stuff is like in the process of the transaction. I know like online, it's harder to
yeah,
do some of this stuff,
right.
but you can certainly do something in the follow up, right?
Mm-hmm.
That will give a similar effect because it'll help increase longer term lifetime
Yep.
value.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you can't do it at point of sale, you can certainly do it after the sale. If somebody, especially if you're buying like a $2,000 course or something like that
Yeah,
online,
for sure.
send a little goodie packet, that says,
Yeah.
"Hey, like this would be a great idea, right?" So
Yeah.
let's say somebody buys a course, right? Usually when you buy a $2,000 course, there's hours of video to watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I have both bought those courses.
Mm-hmm.
What if you sent like a gift basket of candy and popcorn
Big
and
time.
that kind
Yeah.
of stuff and said, "Hey, saw you just signed up. I know there's a lot of videos to get through. Here's some snacks to help you
Mm-hmm.
while you're
Yep.
watching the videos."
Yep.
Like that would be nobody has ever done that for any of the programs I've been in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And can you imagine if that showed up at your door, right? 3 days after you bought a
Absolutely.
course, because they've got your address, they've got your, all the, because you fill out your address usually when you do those
Mm-hmm.
that type of course. Like that would be a huge, like I'd be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I did have one person that when I signed up for like a 5-day challenge and I upgraded to VIP, I got a basket of stuff in the mail. It's like, hey, when we do our 5-day challenge, here's your popcorn, here's your, I forgot what else. They sent a couple like
So smart. Yeah.
couple other things that you could use to interact.
Mm-hmm.
They sent like these emojis on a stick that you could hold up to the screen
Yeah.
while you're on the live stream.
Right.
And I've used those like on all kinds of calls since then.
Sure. Yeah.
So little things like that. I mean, it costs you an extra $5 or $10,
Mm-hmm.
per person, but the impression it leaves is priceless.
It is. It is. I mean, and it doesn't have to be super expensive. I mean, it's just
Well, if you're buying this
small
stuff
little
in
tokens.
bulk,
Yeah.
and out of a $2,000 sale where you have 80% profit margins,
Mm-hmm.
when the rest of the world is dealing with 20 or 30% profit margins,
Yep.
I mean, why not take an extra 5% of that sale,
Yeah.
and put it back into your customer,
Right.
because they're going to remember that and they're going to upgrade to the next package
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that you have available. So
This company, Sweetwater, where I order a lot of the audio gear for podcasting, every time they send out a piece of equipment, whether it's this Rodecaster that I'm using now or, anything else that I would order from them, they would always, every time you'd order without hesitation, you open the box and there's, they've got some candy mints or whatever in there, with a little, obviously a little note, a little symbol of appreciation. That goes a long way, man. I mean,
super long way. Yeah.
So many companies just don't even bother. They just package, send. Well,
yeah. It's like, find something that you can drop in there, whether it's, and something that's not self-promotional. Like the stickers are cool.
Yeah.
But I know you're promoting your brand. You want me to stick it on my car or on my thermos or my laptop or something. Right. When you give me like candy or you give me, obviously you're probably not going to do that for somebody that's ordering carnivore from, whatever.
Right.
Appropriate to the niche.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't, it's not obviously promotional for them. It's just purely value to you or enjoyment to you.
Right.
That's the secret.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I like the stickers and stuff, like after like 3 orders, especially if I'm on a subscription, I don't need another sticker from you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But if you give me
where am I going to put this?
but if you give me maybe even something as simple as a pen, because everybody loses pens.
Right.
Or
just a handwritten note, I mean, in its own separate little envelope, like a handwritten card.
Yeah.
That's stuck in there. Cause that's what the guys from, I remember the guys from Murdy Creative, the guys that do the leather, little folders for presentation.
Yeah.
Every order that you make, I mean, it's like maybe $100 order for a leather, like one of these leather folders that's got your logo.
Yeah.
And etched into it, and you're using that for a presentation, but they'll send every time a card with a handwritten note. Like,
Yeah, Road ID does that handwritten note
exactly.
thing, when you now obviously you don't buy that very often, but
Right.
there's got to be something that you can put in when people buy your course, buy your service.
Right.
Take, especially for these more expensive services. I mean, you're talking about 1% or less of the sale.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a huge expense.
No, doesn't.
It just needs to be intentional and thought out.
Thought out, inexpensive. I mean, we talked about the old Rubik's cubes, something cheap that you can pick up at Dollar General with a creative, message.
Yeah, you can go to Alibaba. I mean, there's tons of places you can find something.
Absolutely.
And like Fallout's fails, do some candy.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody except maybe your super vegan or carnivore crowd or something like that. But for most people, candy's going to do the trick.
Candy, yes, absolutely. Candy works every time. And if they're
massive bag, yeah, I mean, buy a massive bag of Tootsie Rolls for nothing.
Right, that's right.
Comparatively speaking. So
yeah.
All right, man. Well, that's good. Some good stuff there. We'll dive in maybe next episode to creating authority and dynamic personality.
Yeah, there's some really good takeaways. Again, that book is Infotainment, which I got to say, the marketing of a book, if you're going to be marketing a book, make it stand out. I mean, that's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a cool looking book.
Yeah, make the cover stand out, be creative, be different, a little bit different.
We should pull up that sales letter too next week.
Yeah, I'm going to send that over to you because it definitely pulled my attention. And this is not a cheap book either. I mean, it was.
Oh, not if it's been subtle. No, he's not doing a $29.95 book.
No, these aren't inexpensive. I mean, some of this stuff's on Amazon, but those are lead magnets into, just getting on his.
But did
list.
He put candy in it?
No, he did not put a thing. It was sent via FedEx. But FedEx envelope, nothing else in it though. So
see, he missed a chance.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
but he is the soup Nazi. I will call him the soup Nazi of email marketing till the day I die.
For sure.
All right. Well, good show. Thanks to all of our listeners for watching. You can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite podcast. We're there. And Sean, it's been fun. We'll see you all next week.
See ya.